What is obedience? To this question, many social psychologists respond that obedience is the result of a social force field that causes our behavior. These forces include, for example, the pressure from the group we belong to, the expectations of our peers, or the values of our culture. This deterministic perspective on behavior is widely accepted in business schools, especially among researchers in organizational culture. It received empirical validation in the famous studies by Solomon Asch and Stanley Milgram. In 1951, Solomon Asch presented lines of different lengths to subjects, asking them to identify, among these lines, those that were the same length as a reference line. A very easy task that the subjects completed without any problem when they were alone, but which they became unable to do correctly when they were surrounded by people deliberately giving the wrong answer. Even more troubling, in 1963, Stanley Milgram showed that seemingly normal people were willing to fatally electrocute strangers when instructed to do so by a researcher in a white lab coat under the pretext of advancing the understanding of memory. But should we really accept the results of Asch's and Milgram's studies as irrefutable proof that our obedience is caused by irresistible forces? Well, no. The recent opening of the archives of the universities where these experiments were conducted reveals that if their subjects behaved the way they did, it was for specific reasons. More specifically, the subjects in Asch's and Milgram's experiments were fully aware that what they were doing went against common sense or morality, but they did it anyway because they thought it was the right thing to do. For example, some didn't want to disappoint the experimenter, others didn't want to hinder the progress of science, and still others didn't want to upset the group. The reasons given by the subjects in Asch's and Milgram's experiments are varied. But the crucial point is that these are all reasons, not causes. That is to say, if these people gave wrong answers to a simple question or were willing to electrocute a stranger, it was because they thought it was reasonable to do so. They did it willingly and consciously. There is no need to invoke social forces of which they would be passive victims to explain their obedience. In summary, why do we obey? Because we choose to do so, because we believe that disobedience would have a higher concrete cost for us or for others than the moral price of obedience that we are willing to pay.